Blake Shelton stepped into the bright studio lights of Today with Jenna Friends, tension weaving between him and the host before the cameras even rolled. He arrived ostensibly for a special segment, scheduled interviews, laughter, and promotion, but something felt off. The audience noticed subtle stiff smiles, curt nods, the kind that whisper of discord. Jenna, usually warm and easygoing, greeted him with professional friendliness, but her eyes flickered with what looked like frustration. Blake responded with a tight jaw, shoulders squared, clasping his hands in front of him. The conversation began politely, touching on his latest music, home life, ranching, but under the surface words landed like stone as old grievances unspoken, rumors hinted at, expectations unmet. As Jenna asked about new songs and upcoming tours, someone off camera handed Blake papers, notes, questions, perhaps corrections. He glanced down, then back up, brows furrowing. Jenna continued, mentioning some criticism from fans, perhaps about his public persona or a recent social media post. Blake's responses were clipped, each answer shorter, colder, the warmth draining. The audience sensed the shift. He paused before speaking, sometimes choosing silence instead of response. Jenna attempted to steer the segment toward lighter topics, stories about family or pets, but Blake seemed beyond reach. He offered brief smiles at references to his kids or favorite childhood memories, but they lacked conviction. The microphone caught Jenna sliding into a more pointed question, about whether he felt misrepresented in tabloid reports. Blake hesitated. The camera lingered on his hands, one finger tapped the desk. Jenna, with her voice steady, asked, did he think media perceptions unfairly paint him? Blake's face tightened. He spoke, his tone raised slightly. You know, sometimes what you read just isn't all there, he said, his words deliberate. Jenna nodded, gently pushing for specifics. Blake sighed. He leaned back, scanning the studio lights, cameras, crew and paused. Jenna stayed composed, voice reassuring, but the friction was visible. Something Jenna said next provoked a sharper response. She referenced a past quote of his, asking whether he'd stand by his comments. Blake bristled. He leaned forward, eyes fixed, voice firm. I said what I meant. Jenna countered, but context matters, she said, calmly. The air crackled. Blake's jaw clenched. There was a long silence. The audience shuffled in seats. Jenna tried again, softer tone, transitioning to questions of creative process, collaborations. Blake's posture relaxed marginally, but the tension remained. His responses resumed, but they were curt. Jenna shifted to asking about his relationship with fellow musicians, something Blake had spoken about before with fondness. He answered, but his answers were vague, almost evasive. Jenna asked, is there anyone you feel has misinterpreted your intentions? Blake paused. He sipped water, his hand trembling slightly. Then he said, I don't like explaining myself to people looking for controversy. Jenna nodded, acknowledging his sentiment, but then she wondered whether that stance caused misunderstanding, whether stepping back was constructive or passive. Blake's eyes flashed, his voice elevated. Sometimes stepping back feels better than being in the middle of noise. The audience watched as Jenna gently pressed, are you saying some of the noise is coming from this show? Blake's face hardened. A murmur among the crew. Jenna bit her lip, considered her next words. She repeated for clarity, have you had issues with use on this show misquoting or misunderstanding what you said? Blake's response came slowly, I believe in accountability, Jenna. If mistakes happen, we acknowledge. But I can't stand when things are twisty to broken. He paused, chest heaving slightly, finger tracing a mark on the desk. Jenna nodded. She offered an apology where appropriate, acknowledging possibility of miscommunication. Blake's expression softened marginally, but the friction remained. Jenna tried to salvage the mood. She asked about something uncontroversial, his love for country music roots, stories from his childhood, songs inspired by small-town life. For a moment, Blake smiled, genuine, telling of nights on the porch listening to radio, songs strummed under starlight. The audience exhaled, leaning forward in their seats. Jenna smiled, guiding him through his creative inspirations. Blake spoke of mentors, of genuine moments that shaped him, moments of kindness from strangers. And yet, that fleeting calm was broken when Jenna asked whether today's conversation felt like performance, whether being on camera changes how honest one can be. Blake frowned at the question. The smile vanished. Jenna clarified, I mean, do you feel constrained by how the show presents you? By what you think you can or cannot say in this kind of setting? Blake's jaw tightened. He ran a hand through his hair. He leaned forward, looked Jenna in the eyes. There's always thought given. Yes, he admitted. But sometimes, what gets Ed isn't what I meant. Jenna nodded sympathetically. She encouraged transparency. Blake hesitated, tugging at the collar of his shirt, searching for words. The studio's overhead lights seemed brighter now, hotter, oppressive. There was a pause, a stillness. Jenna watched Blake struggle. She asked softly, Do you think we can do better me? The show to avoid miscommunication, to give you space to express. Blake considered. He exhaled slowly. Then he replied, it starts with listening, letting someone finish without cutting in a broken bar without preconceptions. Jenna agreed. Somewhat. She apologized for any times she or the show had interrupted or misunderstood. She reiterated respect, gratitude. Blake nodded, but a flicker of impatience showed. The clock behind them ticked audibly. The tone shifted again when Jenna asked him whether it was difficult to trust interviews anymore, especially after things had been taken out of context in the past. Blake's voice lowered, firm. Yes, trust is tough when you feel like you're always explaining why what you said isn't what people heard. Jenna traced her fingers across her notes, choosing words with care. She said, we want authenticity, broken bar, we want truth. Blake's gaze moved off camera, perhaps toward the producers. The audience leaned in. Jenna asked whether this pressure changed how he writes songs or if he anticipates misinterpretation and writes defensively. Blake paused, then said, sometimes I do. Sometimes I censor myself. Jenna nodded, the concern in her eyes plain. She asked, do you regret any statements, public or private, that sparked misunderstanding? Would you retract anything if you could? Blake sighed, rubs his forehead. He paused long. Then, regret is heavy, he said. I think some things I've said, so maybe I'd say them differently today. But I don't regret speaking up when something mattered. Jenna pressed a little. When something mattered, what do you mean by that? Blake paused, searching memory. Issues of fairness, integrity, loyalty. He spoke of wanting to be true to himself, to avoid the comfortable lie. The conversation turned toward a particular recent interview where Blake felt he had been misquoted. Jenna asked gently, would you tell us your side of what she said versus how it was reported? Blake's shoulders slumped. He inhaled deeply. He described that he had used certain phrasing, that things were published missing qualifications or context, that someone's agenda had filled in gaps for sensationalism. Jenna listened, interrupted occasionally, seeking clarification of what words were missing, what inflection lost, what nuance omitted. Blake described tone, pauses, context. The audience felt empathy. His voice shook slightly. Jenna acknowledged those frustrations. She asked, does this kind of thing make it hard to come back on shows like this? Blake's response, yes. It makes me wary. Jenna nodded, almost apologetic in her posture. She said, we, the media, also want guests who feel respected, heard. Blake looked Jenna in the eye. Then maybe there needs to be change. Jenna asked, what kind of change? Blake paused, thought, more listening, less assuming, more asking what someone meant, not just reporting what fits. Jenna smiled, hopeful. They seemed to approach understanding. But then Jenna circled back, do you feel we crossed a line today? Blake sat silent. Jenna waited. The atmosphere thickened. Blake finally spoke, this isn't about blame. It's about feeling like sometimes you aren't given room. Jenna said, we never meant to make you feel that way. Blake's fingers tapped again. The audience watched in silence. Jenna leaned forward, I hope this isn't a reason you'll walk away. Blake looked down, then back up, voice low, I don't want to, but I have to protect myself too. In that moment, Blake gently pushed his chair back as if mounting an internal resistance. Jenna asked if he wanted to take a break. Blake responded, number. This moment has to happen. Jenna agreed. If you feel something behind your words that isn't mine or ours, I want you to say it. Blake nodded. He inhaled. He stood up, the chair scraping slightly on the floor. The audience shifted. Crew exchanged glances. Jenna looked up, startled. Blake's voice firm, I can't continue under pretense today. Blake turned away from the desk. Jenna rose too, unscripted. The cameras kept rolling, capturing a growing hush. Jenna spoke, Blake here, broken bar, but he walked toward the exit. The staff moved, some rising, offering gestures of support, others looking unsure. Jenna called after him, please, let's talk this through. Blake paused at the edge of the set, then walked off stage. The studio was still. The audience gasped. Jenna stood frozen, eyes wide. Silence stretched for a beat, then murmurs. Off stage, Blake strode through corridors, heart pounding. The roar of unseen audience died behind walls. He moved swiftly, head down, avoiding interviews, unrehearsed statements. He reached a door, stepped through. Jenna's voice called after him, muffled by walls. The production team paused. The director ordered cut. The broadcast shifted, commercials, segments, guests. Yet cameras lingered briefly on Jenna, face flushed, professional mask slipping. The moment had broken the veneer. Backstage, Blake paused, breathing deeply, pressed one hand to his chest, trying to calm what surged within. He heard footsteps. Jenna approached. She flanked him, behind crew, lights dim in hallway. Jenna's voice soft, Blake, I didn't mean to make this about blaming. Blake turned, face unreadable. Jenna continued, I respect you, Appreciate what you bring. Blake nodded stiffly. Their exchange muted, unrecorded. Jenna asked, "Can we fix this?" Blake's voice measured, "Not in public right now." Jenna accepted that, regret in her eyes. The producers emerged, talking in hushed tones. Blake requested water, a moment away. Jenna watched, arms crossed, remorse evident. Crew adjusted lights, prepped next segment without him. The audience, live or on feed, still buzzing. What happened? Viewers texted friends. Social media lit up. Clips circulated. Blake's walk-off. Jenna's expression. Speculation. Was it scripted? Real? Something from a previous disagreement? Fans weighed sides, defended him, critiqued media practices. Later, in a shorter, rescheduled segment, Jenna addressed the absence. She said, "We believe in giving space and respect." Offered apologies if anyone felt misrepresented. She reiterated admiration for Blake's career, but many saw it as damage control. Blake's absence loomed large. The rest of the show felt uneasy, hollow. Interviews forced smiles. Laughter felt a bit forced. The crew attempted to return to normal, but the energy had shifted. Viewers at home sensed it. Gossip columns lit up overnight. Social media exploded. Clips of Blake walking off trending. Viewers discussed power dynamics, whether interviewers should press issues or let guests rest. Critics debated Jenna's role, host or provocateur. Supporters of Blake praised his stance for personal integrity. Others questioned whether public figures must endure uncomfortable questions. Hashtags formed. Opinion pieces dug into interviews gone wrong. Some previous moments Blake regretted were revisited. The talk, media transparency, interview ethics. Next morning, press releases circulated. Blake's team posted a statement. He believes in authenticity and feels misunderstood sometimes. He hopes this incident becomes a moment for more honest conversation. Jenna's show released a message acknowledging the walk-off, affirming their respect for Blake, commitment to clear communication. Public relations experts weighed in, both statements carefully crafted, each seeking to protect reputation. The narrative was shifting, not who is right, but who could better shape public perception. Meanwhile, inside Blake's camp, discussions about future interviews. Will he appear again on Jenna Friends? Under what conditions? Will there be pre-interview calibrations? Will media outlets adapt? Blake considered saying no unless promised fair chance to clarify, to have questions in advance. Jenna's team likely reviewing protocols, how to prepare hosts, how to heed guest boundaries. For Blake, this clash was not just personal discomfort too, it struck at how artists are framed, how spoken words become headlines. Jenna reflected on her hosting style. What had gone wrong today? She considered whether her preparation, her phrasing, her follow-ups had unintentionally provoked rather than clarified. She likely consulted with producers, publicists. She may reach out to Blake personally, off the record, to bridge the rupture. Viewers waiting, hoping for restoration. Some may see the walk-off as courageous, others as unprofessional. But the ripple effects of today's clash extended beyond ratings, into trust, into expectations, into what it means when someone at microphone asks more than simple questions. In the end, this episode of Today with Jenna Friends will be remembered not just for what Blake Shelton said, but for what he refused to do, to stay when he felt unheard, to smile when he felt misrepresented. It will feed discussions about the power of voice, the responsibility of media, and the fragility of public persona. For Blake, perhaps a lesson reaffirmed, authenticity costs something. For Jenna and similar shows, that empathy and listening carry weight equal to scripted laughter. And for audiences, the reminder that behind every interview, real people, feelings, boundaries, history lie waiting, and sometimes, when enough tension builds, someone walks off.